This happened on New Year's Eve back in 2017. I'm from Ohio, just outside of Cleveland, and I was flying home after finishing up a semester at the University of Rochester. I had to stay at school a week after the semester ended for personal reasons, so I unfortunately spent Christmas relatively alone. The flight itself was fine, but I'd already been in a sour mood before I even boarded the plane. I'm a big Browns fan, and as I was at the airport, the Browns lost their final game of the regular season to go 0-16, completely winless. As a lifelong fan, it was a special kind of misery. I think we were the first team to go winless since the 80s or something. To top it off, my flight was delayed, which ruined my family's plans for the night. Originally, we were all supposed to drive to my cousin's house together for a New Year's Eve party and stay the night. But because of the delay, my parents decided to leave early, taking the main car. I was stuck driving the spare car alone. My mom tried to make it up to me by leaving Vera, our golden retriever, behind to keep me company. I wasn't thrilled about making the trip solo, but Vera was always good company. I figured I'd make the most of it. By the time my Uber dropped me off from the airport, it was creeping on 10 o'clock. I didn't even bother unpacking. I just jammed all my stuff in the car, got Vera, locked up the house, and got on the road. The drive itself wasn't anything special, just miles of Ohio backroads winding through empty fields and patches of forest. There wasn't much snow on the ground, just a light dusting, which was nice since I hated driving in the snow. It was pitch black dark, though. The only light came from my headlights and the occasional farmhouse with its porch light glowing faintly in the distance. About halfway into the trip, Vera started whining. At first, I thought she just wanted attention, but then she stood up, pacing in the passenger seat. That's when I realized she needed to go to the bathroom. I groaned, knowing there wasn't much else I could do but pull over. The next clearing I came across was small, barely enough space for the car, but it would have to do. I remember noting to myself how dark it really was out there. If not for the patches of white snow here and there, I probably wouldn't have been able to see into the woods at all. I jammed my hands in my pockets and tried my best not to freeze to death. Vera didn't seem to care about the cold or the darkness. Classic golden retriever. I let her out, not even bothering to leash her. She sniffed around the edge of the trees, taking her sweet time. She didn't wander far, just enough to do her business. And that's when I heard it. All of a sudden, a loud crashing sound echoed from somewhere in the woods. It wasn't just a branch breaking, it was heavier and deliberate, like someone or something was moving through the trees. I literally jumped from how loud it was. Imagine a grown man sprinting through the forest. That's genuinely what it sounded like. I scanned the darkness, squinting to make out anything, but it was too dark to see beyond the first few trees. Before I could react, Vera bolted directly into the woods. It was some worst nightmare-type stuff, I'm telling you. She disappeared into the trees, and I lost sight of her in mere seconds. I yelled her name over and over, but she didn't come back. At that point, my heart was racing, and it started getting hard to breathe. The cold didn't help matters. I couldn't leave her out there. That wasn't an option. Without thinking, I ran into the woods blindly, yelling for her to come back. I didn't want to think about what she was chasing after, so I just ran, letting the adrenaline take over. The only light to aid me was my dim phone flashlight and the thin layer of snow on the ground. It was so dark I was practically running into the trees. I kept running, praying I'd find her before she caught up to whatever was in there. I ran until my lungs gave out from the cold, forcing me to take a break. After nearly falling over from exhaustion, I leaned up against a tree and felt myself about to break down. I honestly didn't know what to do. And then, finally, I saw her. She was crouched low and shivering, walking slowly toward me. Her tail was tucked tightly between her legs. I had never seen her like that before. I dropped to my knees and embraced her. Relief flooded through me. She pressed against me, and I could feel her body trembling. Something had terrified her. That's when I snapped back to reality and realized how serious the situation was. We were still in the middle of the woods, and there was still something out there. I sprung up from my position and told Vera to follow me. This time, she obeyed and stuck by my side like her life depended on it. We started back to the car, but I had no idea if I was going the right way. As if things weren't bad enough, I damn near jumped out of my skin when I heard crashing from behind me. I didn't think. I just started running. Vera darted ahead of me, and I followed her, praying I didn't trip. The crashing sound didn't stop this time. It seemed like it was following us. I can't even tell you how scared I was in that moment. I genuinely felt like I was going to die. By some miracle, Vera led me straight back to the car, and I practically threw her inside before slamming the door shut. As I was jumping in the driver's seat, I glanced back towards the woods, and my stomach dropped. There were 3 figures standing at the edge of the woods, watching us. I jammed the keys in the ignition and floored it out of there. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I was still in shock. It wasn't until I had driven a few miles that I noticed Vera was bleeding. I started panicking as I realized there was a cut just below her shoulder blade. Someone had stabbed her. I slammed on the brakes and ran around the car to the trunk. My mom always kept a first aid kit in every car, and for once, her insistence on being overly prepared paid off. I cleaned Vera's cut as best I could and wrapped it in gauze. She whimpered, and I worried that I was hurting her, but I knew I was doing the right thing. For the first time since the whole sequence had started, I felt myself begin to relax. It was over. I tried not to think about it for the rest of the drive, but I was just so shell-shocked that something like that had happened to me. I ended up not telling my parents or relatives. I don't know why. It just felt like one of those things you keep to yourself.